Well, I am Essence Wilson, co-founder and chief strategy officer at Communities First, and we are in the midst of our annual African American film series. We had a chance to view a film called Hush, which is a documentary about mental health in the African American community. I'm here today with Antoine Lindsay, who is the creator of this film, and he is going to share with us his insights and thoughts about what he's created. And I also want him to do an appeal to our community as to what our next steps should be. So we're going to start with learning more about you. Can you tell us about your journey into filmmaking?
Yes. Again, thank you for having me here. So my journey into filmmaking is one that is non-traditional. So I didn't go to film school. I didn't go to a school for the arts. I have a bachelor's in environmental studies and a master's in public administration. But I've always been, fond of storytelling. When I was younger, my mom, she would rewrite the lyrics to her favorite songs, and I would sit there and, kind of do the same thing. And as I got older, going through life, growing up in Liberty City, Miami, things kind of transitioned and shift. So the aspect of being in the arts wasn't something that was cool, wasn't something that was really, popular. So I ended up being involved in sports for a good portion of my life. And then once I moved out of Liberty City, went to college, I had an opportunity to really explore myself and what it is that I enjoyed. And, writing was something that I really, really enjoyed. And I wrote my first book when I was 24. And after that, I was like, man, I want to turn this book into a movie. And then so the very next year, I went ahead and created it into a short film, which got me an opportunity to screen that short film at Facebook headquarters. And after that, I was like, this is my first film and I'm at Facebook headquarters. Yeah, I'm gonna keep doing this here. And I did my second film that same year called Color of Love. And I did a tour with it. And I had some momentum behind this idea of like, if I were to do something for the rest of my life, what would it be? And it was to be a storyteller. And so I just went ahead, established my film company, 838 Films, with two buddies of mine. And, you know, that's what really got me into becoming a creator, becoming a filmmaker, all these different titles that we want to put on it. And I enjoy it.
And I'll just say you're really good at it, right? So had
Thank
a
you.
chance to see Hush, and even the title was a little bit intriguing, right? This idea of something that we should be talking about, but there are some very important reasons why we've been silent and we've been quiet about mental health. And so for those who haven't seen the film yet, how would you describe it?
So Hush, I got two words: complete transformation. Those are the two words. And what do I mean by that? Complete means that it gives you all of the components that you need to understand what mental health is. And it isn't just your thoughts and your emotions, right? So there's a lot of different things that go into this aspect and idea of mental health. And that's the completeness that you get once you finish watching the film. And then transformational is as you're watching it, you're literally beginning to understand, a broader perspective of the idea of mental health, of the idea of what it means to be Black, what it means to be Black in America, what it means to be, yourself in this country, in this world. And you begin to really think about, well, what is it that I want to experience? And how am I going to achieve that? And that's what happens as people watch this film. They get a sense of feeling complete, like they have some questions answered, as well as they know what to do next. That transformational aspect.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent description. And in watching the film, my assumption was that we were going to be presented with a bunch of data, statistics, 45% of, African Americans, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't sure what to expect. And I did not get that at all.
Yeah, for
You did
sure.
this beautiful job of describing our history and
Uh-huh.
starting back in Africa and walking us all the way through to present day in a way that gave us a historical journey that was not in the textbooks, that was not boring, was very enlightening and really interesting. So you presented all of that before even talking about mental health in the Black community. So I'm curious, why was it important for you to set that context and go all the way back in history that way?
You know, my favorite rapper, Common, he has a on one of his songs, it's a part where a gentleman says, "A man can't know who he is, and where he's going until you know where he comes from." And that was something that stuck with me. And as I, you know, wrote this film, I'll tell you this. Back in 2021, I had an opportunity to do my doctorate in higher education. And this will add some context to why I decided to go this route with the film. And I decided that, I don't want to go ahead and do this doctorate because if I do this doctorate, I won't have time to do this documentary. And so literally the day before I had my interview, I knew I was going to get accepted and admitted into the doctorate program. I called and I canceled the interview and I put my energy and effort towards this. And one of the biggest things that I knew is that when creating this documentary, I had to make sure that, one, it's something that's going to be scholarly, but two, what about the folks like my family that lives back in Miami that don't have college degrees, that don't have high school diplomas, things like that? How can I make a film that when they watch it, they can also get that sense of, completeness and transformation and really be engaged with it? And so what I did was I thought about the idea of making sure that my target audience with the content and what's being discussed is digestible for the person who doesn't have the higher education degree, because so many times we get so caught up in the big words, and that loses people. We get so caught up in the, 17% of blah, 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 this. And I'm, hey, man, I don't even want to hear that. Just tell me what I need to know so we can get going. And so I thought about all of those things. I was like, even with the cast members, I told them, I said, don't go do no research. Don't go do all of this data stuff. We're not having that in this film because that's what's going to lose people. And how do I know? Because when I watch documentaries and it's just data, 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 it's like, yeah, what does that really mean? For someone who's actually looking to get help or someone who's looking to create a change in the world. So I didn't want that in my film.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, you told a history that many of us are unaware of, right? And just the connections that you were able to make. So I think that was excellent and unexpected and very much digestible. So, I'm sure that as a storyteller, you tell stories that are important to you and that resonate with you. So why was this particular documentary important for you to create?
Well, back in 2012, I had a cousin that died by suicide. And that was like my first experience with uh, suicide awareness, really. And then as the years went by, I started to deal with my own stress, being at a predominantly white institution, being a leader on campus, having a kid at a very young age, and still dealing with all these different things that things became overwhelming for me where I ended up going to seek, counseling services. And, I had a therapist at the university and I just wasn't rocking with him. So I'm like, you know what? Can I switch? And they're like, yeah. I was like, all right, cool. And when I switched, I talked with someone else, very nice woman. And she kind of just broke things down to me a little bit, like, yo, you got a lot on your plate. That's really what this all is all about. Let's just figure out how you can deal with this. And so as I you know, continued through my journey, when I wrote my first book, I knew that that book was going to be great. But then I also uh had an opportunity to what's the, oh, you hear that beeping? Okay, cool. So I also had an opportunity to go ahead and think about again what I wanted to do when it comes to film. And Hush, believe it or not, I had this idea back in 2017, but I wasn't prepared to do anything with it. So I had to let it marinate and get some experience on my own. And before my great grandmother passed away in 2016, she had always said, "You're gonna do something that's gonna change the world, baby." And I'm like, that's interesting. And then months later, she passed away. And so I kept that with me. And then when the time came around for Hush, I knew that this was the story that I wanted to tell because not only was it something that I had dealt with, firsthand, but also I knew if I've been through this and I felt like I didn't have any answers, how many other people out there are probably going through something similar and are looking for answers and are afraid to go and seek help, whether it be going to counseling service, whether it be to talk to a family member. So I knew that this film would be important. And I'll answer this question too in terms of the title. The title itself is just something that I'm I'm a poet at heart, so I love taking things. I'm an artist, a creator. I love taking things and transforming it into something completely different. And I thought about the word hush, is that so often we get told, to be quiet or, silence yourself for this. And I said, I want to take that word and I want to make it something powerful. So when people see hush, they become inspired by just looking at that and saying, no, I'm not going to hush. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to do this. And they can, now they're sharing this film, which, generally had this negative connotation to it, hush. Now people are sharing it. Have you seen Hush? Have you seen? Don't even realize the power in that. And so that was one of the pieces that I wanted to do with that.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing your story. And I think, that's one of the things that hinders people from seeking out supports is they think that they're the only one. And everything
Hmm.
that you described in terms of your experience, I'm sure resonates with someone. If I were to walk back, the details of my life resonates with someone else. And so we've all experienced these stresses and, struggles and moments of, desperation where if we had that support and we had the tools and we had the resources in order to deal with it, right, the outcome could be a positive one on the other side versus something that could be negative. So just,
Right.
want to reiterate for folks, like you're not alone, right? If you have a moment or a season of struggle, it's not just you.
Right.
It's normal part of life. So with that in mind, mental health services are often needed, and we see people around us that we know could benefit, right? We know that we
Hmm.
could benefit at different times ourselves, but they're not always sought out. So I'm just curious if you could share some of the reasons, either directly from the film or from life experience, that you think that people don't reach out for help.
Yeah. So let's go back to the first question, or the second question, which is the historical context of it, which is there was no system set up, after slavery for people to be able to deal with what happened. People just had to get out there and figure it out. And then with that, there wasn't the language, right, of, mental health, of depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, all of these different things that were in the communities none of this stuff existed. So what do we lean on? We typically people who were come from a faith-based, community they lean towards that. Go to church, pray about it, all these different things. And there wasn't no concept of really going to seek, psychological or psychiatric assistance. It was just let's pray about it, let's get through it. And so one of the things that I've noticed, within my own family structure, within creating this film, meeting different people, is that we really have dealt with a lot of silence and just pushing things underneath the rug that we didn't know what to, and we still trying to figure it out, but hadn't known for such a long time what to actually do to work on communication within our family systems, to work on what it means to really, pour into ourselves instead of pouring into others so much that we get exhausted and burnt out in these jobs and all these different, social factors that take in place. And so what I've seen is that it's just a matter of access, a matter of, the tangibility of it being available to people within their communities, within their families. Are the conversations happening? Has this been something that has happened in your family for these generations? And the biggest thing I've learned is that people only do what they know. So if all I knew is growing up in, underserved, low income community is that when I'm stressed out, let me go, hey man, boy, let me go grab this bottle, let me go grab this, controlled substance and let me just not even think about all of this, then that's all people know. And can we blame them? for me, I say no. It's just a product of where they are. But at the same time, is there a different way to deal with that? Yes, there is. And that's the thing that most people don't really know that they have access to.
Yeah, great point. One about the blame piece and whose fault is it? And we could try to rehash that, but here's the reality. Insurance is available. There are therapists that are available. There are resources that are available. And we have to focus in on not the blame game, right? But
Hmm.
focus in on the treatment and the healing that needs to happen in our communities. Um, and I think about, the stigma that's associated with mental health and the desire in families sometimes to keep things quiet, because if you start peeling back the layers of the onion, you might get to a place where mama and grandmama don't want you to, touch certain things, or don't want you to remember certain things, or they don't want to have to give an account of, history and why things were a certain way. And I think, we have to set all of that aside and really just say, in order for this person, this family member, myself, right, to be well, I might have to go there, and I might have to do that in, a clinical setting with treatment. I just want to go back to something you said too about, people of faith. I think, prayer is extremely important. Faith is extremely important. Um, but you have to use the right tool for the right job, right? I was on a
Hmm.
call the other day, and we were talking about mental health, and the person said, "What's 2 plus 2?" I said, "4." "What's 4 plus 4?" 8. "What's 10 plus 10?" 20. "What's 1,022 times 468?" Well, I don't know. So what would you do in that instance? You go and get a calculator. Everything can't be handled in your own head. And sometimes you need a better tool to get the answers that you need. And so, that's where, therapists and counselors and investments in mental health can come into play. Um,
Hmm.
so you when you created this film, you broke it down into sections, which was very interesting. So the first one, I was confused. What are we doing here? So I just wanted to know if you could just, talk about that, and the incorporation of the dramatization amidst the conversation that was, more so historical in context. So, why did you decide to do that? And then can you share what those different sections mean?
Yeah, so again, my perspective of the world is very different, um, just from my own experiences. And when I watch films, I enjoy films where it's not what I expected. It's not what I thought it was going to be. Those are some of the most interesting films. And in creating Hush, I knew that I wanted to make it something like that where people watch it and they're like, wait a minute, this is talking about the history, and then they continue to watch, and they see the visual art pieces, and they're starting to draw the conclusions to, oh, wait a minute, these things are it's starting to can connect the dots to this, and you get that flow. And again, it's the methodical process that I have, and the way that I write, and the way that I tell stories, is that we have to start with the seed, right? Or the soil. We have to start with the soil, and then we'll move into the seed, and then we'll move into the fruit, and then we'll move into the transformation that we all get to experience in our lives. And that's those different sections that happen in the film. That's what I wanted people to see. I wanted people to understand that the foundation. What is the foundation, the soil that we come from in terms of mental health in the Black community? Then what were some of the seeds that were planted within us, within our communities, that have now grown, and this is what the fruit are, from that, right? And then now what can we do to transform those fruit? Because I say it all the time to people. I say, it's like you going somewhere, you planting a mango seed and you expecting apple trees to grow, right? That's not how it works. And until you go ahead and you realize that there may be a change in my perspective and my understanding of what's the reality is, you will never be able to change and transform. And sometimes, that comes with assistance from other folks. So with those different sections in the visual art pieces, I also wanted to show, don't tell. So I didn't want to tell people how to feel about this film. I didn't want to tell people what to think about this film. I didn't want to tell people where to go and get help. I wanted to show people. So the visualizations within the film, you can see that there are things that are happening. And again, the idea of hush, right? So nobody's talking, but you can see everything. Because think about, children. Children may not have a voice at the moment, but they're looking and watching and seeing what's happening, just as we do as adults with our discernment and people that we communicate with. And it's like you're able to see how everything has transpired over the course of this time within the film until the end. And then you take the visual art pieces and you connect it with the interviews from our interviewees, and it's like, wow, all of this makes so much sense. And then boom, Hush is a beautiful masterpiece.
Yeah, and you're not just saying that, it is a truth. As we were watching, and there was a small group of us on our staff, and we're watching, and in those moments, we were having conversation, right? Trying to share our interpretations, and then also trying to see if we could figure out what was coming next. So it was beautifully done, and it keeps the engagement, right? Because you wonder, okay, so what does that mean? Well, what's the symbolism of this, component and this interaction while no one's having conversation and no one's talking. So really well done. So as we, conclude our time together, I'm just wondering, what is your hope for the impact of this film? And, what would your charge be to the community?
So for me, I don't have hope, you know. I don't have any hope. I just have just this limitless energy of whatever happens is going to happen from this film. And whatever folks get from it, they're going to get from this film. And, for me, it's a limitation to set an expectation of what I want people to do and what I want people to have. The only thing that I truly desire is that if someone's going to watch the film, just really watch it, pay attention to it, absorb it, and figure out what is it going to do for you. But I don't have much of an expectation in terms of what I feel like the community needs to do because of watching this film. I think those are things that come from people, innately after they finish watching the film. Just like when I saw Ava DuVernay's 13, I knew that, wow, saw this film, I can definitely create a documentary too. I can definitely, learn from this and do what I needed to do. But it wasn't, and I don't think her intent was for it to be specifically for someone to do that. It might have been to talk about mass incarceration, but I ended up creating a film on mental health. So I just kind of look at it as that, is that folks should be able to, just watch it and figure out what is this transformative piece going to be for them after they watch it. And just to help, make the world a better place.
Yeah, and the feedback from my team was that for the content to be something that could be so heavy, we left the experience feeling lighter. And words were given to things that had been felt and internalized. And we had a chance to contemplate things that happened in, my home, that happened in somebody else's home, and recognizing that those were common experiences as a result of our shared history, and it wasn't specific to our family. So it developed a sense of community just, from that. So I appreciate that your purpose in this was not to have some specific call to action. And my hope is that as people watch the film, that the things that resonate with them, whether it's healing through learning of history, or it's a development of community because of our shared experiences, or if it truly is the recognition that because of things that have happened in the past, things that are happening in the present, we have to invest in mental health so that we can have the future that we desire, right? Whatever it is, however it resonates with somebody, my hope is that they would just embrace that and live in that as a truth, and continue to move forward in a positive way. So I just want to say thank you, Antoine, for creating the film. Thank you for being with us, and just for this opportunity to just kind of like break it down a little bit and digest it with you.
I appreciate that, and I definitely am grateful, for you giving me this opportunity to share Hush with you all. This film, it is a timeless, limitless piece that I don't even think the word excited really explains how I feel about what this film is going to do for people. And if I could add just a small little piece when you just said something about the reflection piece, it was the film. My creative process for this film was very, very intentional with the art, the colors. When you say you left feeling lighter, I made sure there were no dark scenes
Yeah.
because this conversation is often seen as, something dark. So why have dark scenes in a dark room that people are going to watch it in? And it might trigger them into, feeling a certain type of way. Like one of the shows that I just personally do not watch is First 48. Why? Because of my experiences with it, growing up and having the experience, friends, close friends of mine passing away and their stories on that show. And it's dark and the music and all these different other factors that can trigger people. It's like, no, I don't want my film to be like that. I want my film to be engaging. I want the colors to speak to people, in every scene. I want the backgrounds, the atmosphere to speak to people, the music particularly to speak to people as they're going through this experience of watching Hush. So like you said, very, very intentional, very, very thoughtful and making sure that the experience of Hush was one that literally left people feeling, again, having some answers, answered and feeling transformed afterwards to reflect on what do they want to do next.
Well, you certainly accomplished your goal. Thank you again. Much appreciated, much needed. And we just look forward to what is to come and the opportunity to work with you again in the future. And we'll see what you create next.
For
Thank you.
sure. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hi, everybody. This is Julie Coker, and I'm here at the FIA attending the African American Film Series. I've been coming to the African American Film Series for years. The films are informative, educational, and at times entertaining. I just love it. Also, the Communities First gives us a delicious meal, and we have live entertainment. You can't beat that. Also, on the Saturdays after the film, there's a thought-provoking panel discussion if you want to delve into the subject